It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning in Oakwood Hills. The birds were chirping, the sky was blue, and Tim Carter was outside his little house ready to fix his porch. The porch wasn't in good shape. The wood creaked every time he stepped on it, like it was groaning in pain. The paint was peeling off in big, ugly flakes, showing the old, gray boards underneath. Tim looked at it and thought, enough is enough, I'm fixing this today. So he grabbed his hammer in one hand and a little box of shiny nails in the other. Nothing fancy, just a guy with some tools ready to get to work. Tim wasn't tall or short, he wasn't loud or wild. He was just Tim, a regular guy with messy brown hair and a faded blue shirt. He liked his quiet life in Oakwood Hills. He'd moved in a few months ago and most people didn't pay much attention to him. He mowed his lawn, waved hello, and kept to himself. But here's the thing, Tim wasn't like everyone else. Nope, he had a secret, a big one. It wasn't the kind of secret like hiding candy under your bed. It was a secret that could shake up the whole neighborhood. But nobody knew it yet, not the kids riding bikes, not the old lady watering her flowers, and definitely not the nosy woman across the street. That woman's name was Karen Miller. Oh boy, Karen was something else. She lived in a big white house with perfect green grass and flowers that never dared to droop. She was the boss of the HOA, that's the group that makes rules for the neighborhood. Karen loved rules. She loved them so much she'd walk around with a little ruler, measuring people's grass to make sure it wasn't too tall. If your mailbox was a tiny bit crooked, she'd write you a mean note. If your dog barked once, she'd knock on your door and complain. Everyone knew Karen, and everyone tried to stay out of her way. Karen had been watching Tim ever since he moved in. She didn't trust him. He's too quiet, she'd say to herself, peeking out her window. He doesn't talk much, he doesn't come to HOA meetings, he's probably up to no good. That morning, as Tim started banging his hammer on the porch, Karen's curtains twitched. She stood there, arms crossed, her sharp eyes locked on him. She didn't like noise, she didn't like messes, and she really didn't like Tim. Tim didn't know Karen was watching, at least not at first. He was too busy lining up a nail and giving it a good whack. Bang, the sound echoed a little, bouncing off the houses nearby. The porch was old, and fixing it wasn't easy. Some boards were wobbly and others had cracks running through them like little rivers. Tim wiped sweat off his forehead and kept going. Bang, bang, he liked working with his hands. It made him feel strong, like he could fix anything. And maybe he could. But not just porches. Oh no, Tim had bigger things in mind. Back across the street, Karen's frown got deeper. She didn't like the banging, she didn't like the pile of old wood Tim had stacked by his steps, and she didn't like that he was doing this on a Saturday. Weekends are for quiet, she muttered, not for hammering and making a racket. She grabbed her phone off the table. It was her favorite thing, always ready to call someone and tattle. She called the police before, you know. Once because a kid left a skateboard in the street. Another time because someone's trash can lid wasn't shut tight. Karen was the queen of complaining, and she wore that crown proudly. Tim kept working. The sun climbed higher, making everything warm and bright. He pulled off another flaky piece of paint and tossed it into the grass. The porch was starting to look better already. One board was nailed down tight, no more creaking. He smiled a little. It felt good, but then he heard something, a sharp, loud voice cutting through the air. Hey you, it said. Tim looked up and there was Karen marching across the street like she owned the whole world. She stopped right at the edge of his yard, hands on her hips. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped. Her voice was loud enough to scare the birds out of the trees. Tim blinked at her. "Fixing my porch," he said, nice and calm. He held up his hammer like it was proof. Karen's eyes narrowed. "You can't do that," she said. "It's too loud, it's against the rules. I'm in charge here and I say you stop right now." Tim didn't stop, he just looked at her for a second, then went back to his work. Bang, another nail went in. Karen's face turned red. "Did you hear me?" she yelled. "I said stop." Tim shrugged. "It's my porch," he said, "needs fixing." That made Karen even madder. She hated when people didn't listen to her. She hated when they didn't follow her rules. And she really hated Tim right then. Karen pulled out her phone and waved it in the air. "Fine," she said. "If you won't stop, I'll make you stop. I'm calling the police." Tim didn't even look up this time. He just kept hammering. "Bang, bang, go ahead," he said, his voice steady as a rock. Karen stared at him, shocked. Most people got scared when she threatened to call the cops. Most people begged her to give them a chance, but not Tim. He didn't seem worried at all. And that made Karen wonder, what was this guy hiding? Here, where it gets fun, friends, Tim wasn't scared because he knew something Karen didn't. That secret of his, it was big, bigger than a noisy porch, bigger than Karen's rules. See, Tim wasn't just some guy with a hammer, he was someone special, someone who'd been waiting for a moment like this. But Karen didn't have a clue. She thought she was the smart one, the one in control. Oh boy, was she wrong. Let's rewind a little. Tim had moved to Oakwood Hills for a reason. He didn't pick this house because it was pretty or cheap. He picked it because of people like Karen, people who thought they could boss everyone around, people who made life hard for no good reason. Tim had a job, a secret job. He didn't talk about it, didn't brag about it. But it was why he was here, fixing his porch, letting Karen watch him like a hawk. Every bang of his hammer was like a little signal, saying, "I'm here and I'm ready." Karen didn't know any of that. She just saw a quiet guy with a messy porch, someone she could pick on. She dialed 911, her fingers fast on the buttons. "Hello, yes, this is Karen Miller," she said into the phone. "I've got a problem. There's a man making noise, breaking rules. I need someone here right now." She glared at Tim as she talked, thinking she'd won, thinking she'd teach him a lesson. Tim heard her, but he didn't care. He drove another nail into the wood. Bang, the porch was looking stronger, and so was he. He wasn't loud or mean like Karen. He didn't need to be. His strength was quiet, hidden, waiting for the right time to come out. And that time, it was getting closer. Karen thought she was about to ruin his day, but something bigger was brewing, something she'd never see coming. The neighborhood was quiet now, except for Tim's hammer and Karen's angry voice. Kids stopped riding their bikes to watch. The old lady with the flowers peeked over her fence. Everyone could feel it. Something was happening, something exciting. Was Karen going to get her way? Was Tim in trouble, or was there a twist waiting around the corner? What do you think, friends? Was Karen about to win, or was Tim hiding something that would flip everything upside down? Stick around, because this story's just getting started and it's going to get good. Tell me in the comments, have you ever met someone like Karen? Someone who loves rules too much? I bet you have. Let's see what happens next. By noon, the sun was high in the sky, shining down on Oakwood Hills. Tim Carter's porch was starting to look pretty nice. The creaky boards weren't so creaky anymore. The nails held them tight, and the pile of old, flaky paint was growing bigger by the minute. Tim was busy hammering away with a steady bang, bang, bang. He wiped sweat off his forehead with the back of his hand and smiled a little. He liked seeing the porch come together. It was his house, his work, and he was proud of it. Just a guy with a hammer minding his own business, or so it seemed. But then trouble came marching across the street. Karen Miller, the HOA queen, had had enough. Her arms were crossed tight over her chest, and her lips were squeezed into a thin, angry line. She stormed over to Tim's yard like a thundercloud ready to burst. Her shoes clicked on the pavement, loud and sharp, and her eyes were locked on Tim. She stopped right at the edge of his grass and pointed a finger at him. "You can't just bang around like that," she snapped. Her voice was loud, cutting through the warm air like a knife. "It's against HOA rules to make noise on weekends. I'm calling the cops." Tim didn't even look up. He held a nail between his fingers, lined it up with the wood, and gave it a good whack. Bang! The sound rang out, clear and strong. He stayed calm, like nothing Karen said bothered him at all. "Go ahead," he said, his voice steady and quiet. It was almost like he was daring her, like he wanted her to do it. Karen's eyes got wide. She wasn't used to people talking back to her. Most folks in Oakwood Hills just nodded and said, "Yes, Karen," when she bossed them around. But not Tim. Oh no, he was different. Karen huffed, a big puff of air coming out of her nose. She didn't like this one bit. She didn't like Tim's hammering. She didn't like his messy pile of wood, and she really didn't like that he wasn't scared of her. She yanked her phone out of her pocket, holding it up like it was a magic wand that could make all her problems go away. Karen loved that phone. It was her weapon, her way to control everyone. She called the police 100 times before over barking dogs, kids playing too loud, even a bird that chirped too early in the morning. And now she was calling them on Tim. "Yes, hello," she barked into the phone as soon as someone picked up. "This is Karen Miller from Oakwood Hills. There's a man causing a disturbance. He's breaking rules, banging and making noise, and I feel unsafe." She glared at Tim while she talked, her eyes like little lasers trying to burn holes right through him. She thought she'd won. She thought the police would come racing over, lights flashing, and drag Tim away. In her mind, she was the hero, saving the neighborhood from this noisy troublemaker. Oh, how wrong she was. Tim kept hammering. Bang, bang. He didn't flinch, didn't stop, didn't even peek at Karen. He just kept going, cool as a cucumber. That's the funny thing, Tim wasn't worried. Not one tiny bit. See, he'd met people like Karen before. Bossy people, mean people, people who thought they could scare everyone into doing what they wanted. But Tim wasn't scared. He had a secret, a big one, and it made him strong. He knew something Karen didn't, something that was about to turn her whole world upside down. And he wasn't going to let her little phone call ruin his day. Karen hung up the phone with a smug little smile. "They're on their way," she said, crossing her arms again. "You'll see, you can't break my rules and get away with it." She stood there, waiting for Tim to beg or apologize. Most people would. Most people would say, "Oh, please, Karen, don't call the cops, I'll stop." But Tim, he just shrugged. "Okay," he said, and drove another nail into the porch. Bang! That shrug made Karen's face turn redder than a tomato. She wasn't used to this. She was the queen, the boss, the one everyone listened to. Who did this guy think he was? The air between them felt heavy, like a storm was coming. Karen stood tall, glaring at Tim. Tim kept working, calm and quiet. Neighbors started to notice. A kid on a bike slowed down to watch. The old lady with the flowers stuck her head over her fence, her eyes big and curious. Even the birds seemed to hush, waiting to see what would happen next. It was like a showdown in one of those old cowboy movies. Karen on one side, Tim on the other, and the whole street holding its breath. Karen tapped her foot fast and loud. Tap, tap, tap. She was mad, but she was also sure she'd win. The police were coming after all. She'd called them and they always listened to her. She'd gotten people in trouble before, fines for tall grass, warnings for loud music. She thought this was just another easy victory. "You're done," she said, pointing at Tim again. "When the cops get here, they'll make you stop. Maybe they'll even take you away." She smiled like she'd already won the prize. But Tim didn't budge. He grabbed another nail, tapped it into place, and swung his hammer. Bang! He wasn't loud or mean. He didn't yell back or argue. He just kept doing his thing, like Karen was a buzzing fly he could ignore, and that made her madder than ever. "Did you hear me?" she shouted. "I said you're done." Tim looked up for just a second, his brown eyes meeting hers. "I heard you," he said. "I'm still fixing my porch." Then he went right back to work. Bang, bang. Karen's hands balled into fists. She wasn't just mad now, she was furious. Nobody ignored her like this. Nobody dared to keep going when she told them to stop. She stepped closer, right onto Tim's grass. "You think you're so smart," she hissed. "You think you can do whatever you want, but I run this place. I make the rules, and you're nobody." Her words were sharp, like little darts aimed at Tim. She wanted him to feel small, to feel scared. But here's the kicker: Tim didn't feel small. He didn't feel scared. He'd heard words like that before, mean words, bossy words, and they didn't shake him. He knew something Karen didn't. He wasn't just a guy fixing a porch. He wasn't just a quiet neighbor. He was someone with a plan, someone with a secret that made him stronger than Karen could ever guess. And that secret, it was about to change everything. Karen didn't see it. She was too busy being mad, too busy thinking she was in charge. She stood there waiting for the police, sure they'd take her side. She didn't notice how calm Tim was. She didn't notice the little smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. She didn't know that every bang of his hammer was like a countdown to something big, something she'd never expect. The tension grew thicker. The street got quieter. The kid on the bike stopped pedaling and just stared. The old lady's flowers drooped a little, like they could feel the fight in the air. Karen kept talking, her voice loud and sharp. "You'll be sorry," she said. "You'll wish you listened to me." Tim didn't answer. He didn't need to. He just kept hammering, steady and sure. Bang, bang, bang. Each sound was like a little poke at Karen, making her angrier, making her squirm. She didn't get it. She didn't see that Tim wasn't afraid of her or the cops or anything. He'd dealt with bigger things than a noisy phone call. He'd faced tougher people than Karen Miller. And he knew that this wasn't going to end the way she thought. Something was coming, something that would flip her world like a pancake on a hot pan. But Karen, she was blind to it. She thought she held all the power. She thought Tim was just a nobody with a hammer. What do you think, friends? Was Karen right? Would the police come and stop Tim? Or was Tim's secret about to turn the tables? The air was buzzing with questions. The fight was on, and it was only getting started. Karen versus Tim, the HOA queen versus the quiet guy. Who would win? Stick around, because this is where it gets wild. The minutes ticked by, slow and steady, like the drip of a leaky faucet. Karen Miller stood on Tim Carter's lawn, her arms crossed tight and her foot tapping fast on the grass. Tap, tap, tap. It was loud enough to hear from across the street. She was waiting, oh so sure that the police were about to swoop in like superheroes and save her day. She'd called them after all. She'd told them about the noisy man breaking her precious HOA rules. In her mind, they'd come running, lights flashing, sirens blaring, ready to drag Tim away. She could almost see it, Tim in trouble, her in charge, just the way she liked it. But Tim, he didn't care about Karen's tapping or her yelling. He kept working on his porch, hammer in hand, banging nails into the wood. Bang, bang, he even started whistling a little tune, soft and happy, like he didn't have a worry in the world. The sun was hot now, beating down on his messy brown hair, but he didn't stop. He pulled another creaky board loose, tossed it into the pile, and grabbed a fresh one. He was calm, steady, like nothing could shake him. And that made Karen's face twist up even more. Neighbors started to peek out their windows. Curtains moved just a little and curious eyes popped up to see what was going on. "What's Karen up to now?" they whispered to each other. They knew her too well. She was always making a fuss, yelling about trash cans, complaining about kids' toys, bossing everyone around. And now here she was, picking a fight with the new guy Tim, the quiet one, the one who didn't talk much. They leaned closer to their windows, watching the drama unfold like it was a show on TV. Tim didn't notice the neighbors, or if he did, he didn't let on. He just smiled to himself, a tiny little grin that nobody else could see. See, Tim had a secret, a big one, and it wasn't just that he wasn't scared of Karen. Oh no, it was more than that. He'd seen something earlier that morning, way before Karen got mad and called the cops. A police car had rolled by, slow and quiet, driving down the street like it was looking for something or someone. Tim had watched it from his porch, hammer in hand, and he'd had a hunch, a little feeling in his gut that told him why it was there, and it wasn't because of his hammering. Karen didn't know about that police car. She didn't see it. She was too busy being mad, too busy thinking she was the smartest person on the block. She didn't notice the black SUV parked 2 houses down, tucked behind a big oak tree. It was just sitting there, quiet as a mouse, with 2 officers inside. They weren't moving, they weren't talking, they were watching everything. Their eyes were on Karen, not Tim, but she didn't have a clue. She was too caught up in her own little world, yelling at Tim like he was the biggest problem in Oakwood Hills. "You'll be sorry when they haul you away," Karen shouted, her voice loud and sharp. She pointed her finger at Tim, wagging it like a teacher scolding a naughty kid. "The police are coming and they'll stop this noise. You can't break my rules and get away with it." She stood tall, her chin up, sure she'd won. In her head, she was the queen, and Tim was just a nobody who'd learn his lesson soon enough. Tim stopped hammering for a second. He wiped his hands on his jeans, leaving little streaks of dirt on the blue fabric. Then he looked up at Karen, right into her angry eyes. He didn't yell back, he didn't get mad, he just stared at her, calm and cool, and said, "Funny thing about that." His voice was quiet, but it had a little edge to it, like he knew something she didn't. "I don't think I'm the one they're here for." Then he went right back to work. Bang, bang. The hammer hit the nail, and the sound bounced off the houses. Karen blinked, her mouth opened a little, like she wasn't sure what to say. What did he mean? Of course the police were coming for him. She'd called them. She told them he was the problem. But Tim's words stuck in her head, buzzing around like a pesky fly. "What are you talking about?" she snapped. "You're the one making noise. You're the one breaking rules." She stepped closer, her shoes sinking into the grass. "You're just trying to act tough. It won't work." Tim didn't answer. He just kept whistling soft and easy, like he was having the best day ever. Bang! Another nail went in. The porch was looking better and better, and Tim's little smile got a tiny bit bigger. He wasn't scared. He wasn't worried. And that made Karen madder than a wet cat. She didn't like it when people didn't listen to her. She didn't like it when they didn't shake in their shoes at her big, loud voice. And she really didn't like that Tim was acting like she was nothing to him. The minutes kept ticking. The sun kept shining. The neighbors kept watching. A little boy on a red bike rode by, then stopped to stare. The old lady with the flowers poked her head out her door, her gray hair bouncing as she leaned forward. Even a squirrel stopped running up a tree to look at Tim and Karen. It was like the whole street could feel something big was coming, something exciting, something wild. But what? Nobody knew yet, not even Karen. That black SUV was still there, 2 houses down. The officers inside sat still, their sunglasses hiding their eyes. They weren't here for Tim's hammering. Nope, they were watching Karen. Every time she yelled, every time she waved her arms, they saw it. They'd been watching her for a while, not just today, but for days, maybe weeks. And Tim, he had a hunch about that. He'd seen the police car earlier, and he'd heard whispers around town, little bits of talk about Karen and her HOA rules. Something wasn't right with her, and Tim knew it. Karen kept going, her voice getting louder. "You think you're so smart," she shouted. "You think you can ignore me? Well, you'll see. The cops will be here any minute and they'll shut you down." She tapped her foot faster now, tap, 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 like a drum beating out her anger. She was so sure, so certain, that she didn't stop to think. She didn't wonder why Tim wasn't scared. She didn't ask herself why he kept smiling that little smile. Tim grabbed another board and set it in place. He tapped a nail into the wood, then swung his hammer. Bang! He looked up at the sky for a second, like he was enjoying the day, then back at his work. He wasn't in a hurry. He wasn't mad. He was just Tim, but inside he was waiting for the right moment. See, Tim wasn't just fixing a porch. He was here for a reason, a big secret reason. And every bang of his hammer was like a step closer to something huge. Karen didn't see the SUV. She didn't hear the whispers from the neighbors. She didn't know that Tim's hunch was right. She was too busy yelling, too busy thinking she was the boss. "You're done," she said again, her voice cracking a little. "You're finished. The police will take care of you." She waved her phone in the air like it was proof she'd won. But Tim just shook his head, a tiny little shake, and kept whistling. The tension was thick now, like fog you could feel. The neighbors leaned closer to their windows. The boy on the bike held his breath. The old lady clutched her flowers, her eyes wide. Something was happening, something big. Tim's words echoed in the air. "I don't think I'm the one they're here for." What did he mean? Why wasn't he scared? What did he know that Karen did? Karen's foot kept tapping. Tim's hammer kept banging. The SUV stayed quiet, watching, waiting. The street was alive with questions, buzzing with wonder. Was Karen right? Would the police come for Tim? Or was Tim's secret about to spill out and change everything? The minutes stretched on, and every second felt like a little clue, a little hint, pulling everyone closer to the truth. What was Tim hinting at? Why was he so calm? The answers were coming, friends, big wild answers that would flip this story upside down. Don't go anywhere because this is where it gets good. What do you think? Did Tim know something Karen did? Was he ready for a big surprise? Let's find out together. Just then, a police cruiser rolled up, its tires crunching on the gravel right in front of Tim Carter's house. The sun glinted off its shiny black and white paint, and the red and blue lights on top stayed quiet. No sirens, no flashing, just a slow, steady stop. Karen Miller's face lit up with a big, smug smirk. She clapped her hands together once, loud and sharp, like she'd just won a prize. "See, I told you," she crowed, her voice bouncing off the houses. She pointed at Tim, her finger wagging like a windshield wiper. "I said the cops were coming, and here they are. You're in big trouble now." Tim didn't move. He didn't jump or yell or even look scared. He just stood there by his porch, hammer still in his hand, watching the car. Karen bounced on her toes, so sure she'd won. She thought the police were here to grab Tim, to stop his hammering, to make him sorry for breaking her precious HOA rules. In her head, she was the hero, and Tim was the bad guy about to get what he deserved. Oh boy, was she in for a surprise. The car doors opened and two officers stepped out. They were tall, with shiny badges pinned to their dark blue uniforms. Their boots hit the ground with a soft thud and they straightened up, looking around. Karen's smirk got even bigger. She crossed her arms, waiting for them to march over to Tim and tell him off. But here's the thing, they didn't even glance at Tim, not once. Their eyes slid right past him like he wasn't even there. Instead, they turned and started walking straight toward her. Their steps were slow and steady, like they had all the time in the world. Karen's smirk wobbled a little. She blinked fast, confused. The officers stopped right in front of her, so close she could see the little lines on their badges. One of them, the taller one with a deep voice, looked down at her and said, "Karen Miller." His words were firm, like a teacher calling your name in class. Karen's jaw dropped, hanging open like a fish out of water. Yes," she stammered, her voice small and shaky. She didn't sound so bossy now. The officer didn't smile. He didn't laugh. He just stood there, big and serious, and said, "Ma'am, we've been looking for you." Karen's eyes got wide, bigger than dinner plates. Her hands fell to her sides and she took a tiny step back. "What?" she squeaked. The officer kept going, his voice steady as a rock. "We've got a warrant for your arrest. Tax fraud, HOA fund theft. Ring any bells?" He raised one eyebrow, waiting for her to say something. The color drained from Karen's face fast, like someone had pulled